While Lilian was battling her pain in silence at Folake's place, David too had made a quiet decision of his own. After that meeting in the pastor's office, the one where Lilian walked out and never looked back, David felt something shift in him. It wasn't just shame or disappointment, it was exhaustion. He had poured years into that church, led the music department with integrity, mentored younger singers, showed up every week, every practice, every retreat. And yet, one mistake, one moment of human weakness was all it took for the respect to vanish. So, he left, not out of anger, not even out of pride. He just let go. He packed up and moved out of the town to a quieter city 2 states away. He didn't announce it to anyone. No farewell messages, no closure, just left. The wound was still fresh, but he needed to breathe again. The new city was peaceful, slower. People minded their business. It felt like a clean slate. David found a small apartment and got a job teaching music at a Christian school. It didn't pay much, but it gave him joy, and most importantly, it kept him grounded. He took his time before choosing a church. He visited several, looking for something authentic, not just structure or size, but spirit, somewhere that wouldn't place image above heart. Eventually, he found one, a modest Bible-based church with no spotlight, no stage performance, just believers growing together. He didn't tell them he used to be a music director. They didn't rush to join any department. For weeks, he simply sat, worshipped, took in the word, allowed his soul to heal. One Sunday, the pastor taught on God's love beyond our failures. The message pierced something deep in him. That afternoon, David walked up to him after service and shared a piece of his story without naming names. I used to be in music ministry. I made a mistake. It got messy, public. People assumed things, judged. The pastor didn't flinch. He simply said, "God's not done with you." That was it. No interrogation, no conditions, just grace. Meanwhile, in the same city, unknown to David, Lilian was living in Folake's house, drowning in her own shame. She barely ate. She cried often. Folake tried to cheer her up with sarcasm and party talk, but Lilian wasn't finding comfort. If anything, she was more confused. Folake noticed she had gone quiet. "You are thinking again," she said. "Stop it. Let's go out tonight. I know one club, sweet vibes, good food, just one night out. Clear your head." Lilian didn't respond. "You need it," Folake continued. "I'll pick your outfit." By evening, the pressure mounted. Folake danced around the house, trying clothes on, hyping Lilian with, "Babe, you don't know what you need until you feel it. Tonight, we'll forget everything." Lilian didn't fight it. Somewhere deep down, a war raged inside her. Part of her wanted to feel something, anything other than pain. Another part screamed that she had come too far to fall again. But she said nothing as Folake handed her a dress. She changed into it slowly. Her eyes were dull, her heart conflicted. She wasn't really interested, but her heart was numb. Sometimes, numbness makes wrong things feel okay. Just as they were stepping out of the door, Lilian's phone rang. She froze. She looked at the screen. It was David. She hadn't heard from him since they walked out of the pastor's office. Her heart skipped. She looked at Folake. "Give me a sec." She ran back inside and picked the call. "Hello," she said softly. "Lilian," came the familiar voice. She nearly collapsed into the chair behind her. She hadn't heard that voice in weeks. "It's me, David," he said gently. She was quiet for a second. "I know," she whispered. They both paused. There was so much to say, but neither knew where to start. "I heard you left town," David said. "I did. Are you okay?" "No," she replied honestly. but I'm breathing. David chuckled lightly. That's enough for now. Then he asked, where did you move to? She mentioned the name of the city. David sat up. Wait, are you serious? Yes, why? I live here now. I moved here some weeks ago. Lilian's eyes widened. You're kidding, right? No, I had no idea you were here too. There was a pause, almost like they both realized at once that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't coincidence. Outside, Folake knocked on the door hard. Lilian! Uber is outside, oh, let's go. David heard it. Where are you going? He asked. Lilian exhaled. My friend is dragging me to the club. A club? I just want to clear my head, she added quickly, already feeling ashamed. David's voice was firm but calm. Lilian, don't. There was silence. Please don't go, he said again. Not because of me, but because that's not you anymore. Lilian stared at the floor. You're not looking for lights and noise. David continued. You're looking for peace. And you won't find that where God already brought you out from. Tears welled up again. She sniffled, pressing the phone harder to her ear, as if it made his voice feel closer. You're not what they called you, he said softly. You're not their gossip. You're not the photo that went viral. You're a daughter of God. You were wounded, yes, but you're still chosen. She covered her mouth, emotion bubbling. David didn't stop. Don't let that kiss define your entire calling. Don't throw away everything God has built in you just because of church people. You weren't serving them. You were serving God. Lilian whispered, but I'm tired. I know, he replied. But if you must fall, fall into his arms, not into a club. Folake knocked again, harder this time. Babe, are you deaf? I'm leaving, no. Lilian rose to her feet, phone still to her ear. David, she said, voice cracking. Thank you. He paused. Will you be okay? She nodded slowly, even though he couldn't see. I think I just found strength again. I'll text you the address of my church, he added. No pressure, even if you just sit at the back and leave quietly. It's fine, but don't go dark. Don't let them win. She ended the call and opened the door. I'm not going again, she told Folake. Folake blinked. What? I'm not in the mood anymore, so you will just sit here and cry again? No, I will sit here and fight. Fight for what's left for my faith. Folake hissed. Suit yourself, she mumbled, walking out of the gate. Lilian shut the door gently, turned and leaned on it, then slid down to the floor, tears rolling freely. But this time, they weren't tears of defeat. They were tears of revival. Lilian didn't step into a church building again, not immediately, but something had changed since that night. After David's call, she began to feel a quiet pull, a reminder that though church had hurt her, God hadn't changed. His presence was still real, his voice still soft, his arms still opened, and so she began to heal with God alone. Each morning, while Folake slept in after a late night out, Lilian would sit by the window in the guest room with a Bible open and a small notepad beside her. No church music, no live-streamed sermons, just her Bible, and a heart that wanted to breathe again. She began reading the Psalms, slowly, letting each line settle in her heart like medicine. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and save those who are crushed in spirit. Psalm 34 verse 18. She wept when she read it. One day, she whispered out loud, God, I believe you are close even now. From that point, her healing came like drops of rain, small, steady, gentle, not loud, not dramatic. She worshipped softly in her room, sang songs she hadn't dared to sing in weeks. Her voice was shaky at first, but with each note, her spirit rose again. Meanwhile, Folake noticed the change. You are really not going to church, but you are still praying, she said one evening. That's funny. Lilian smiled. Church failed me. God didn't. Folake rolled her eyes. Deep. That's deep. But Lilia didn't argue anymore. She just kept growing quietly. It was a Tuesday afternoon. Lilia had stepped out to buy sanitary supplies and a small tin of balm. The sun was hot and the streets were unusually quiet. As she entered the neighborhood pharmacy and greeted the attendant, a voice behind her asked, "Please, do you have multivitamins?" She froze. That voice. Slowly she turned, and there he was, David. Casual t-shirt, clean haircut, same calm expression. His eyes widened when he saw her. "Lilian?" She blinked. "David." For a second, neither of them moved. "I didn't know you used this pharmacy," she said awkwardly. "I didn't know you were even here." They both laughed, nervously at first. She paid for her things. He bought his. But outside the pharmacy, neither of them seemed in a rush to leave. "You look better," he said. "I'm healing," she smiled. "Me too," he nodded. They stood there for a minute. Then David said, "There's a small park down the road. You free to walk?" Lilian looked at the sky, then nodded, "Sure." That one walk became 2, then 3, then every few days. They didn't define it. They didn't complicate it. Sometimes they talked about scripture, about God's grace, pain, and restoration. Other times, they just sat quietly, watching kids play or trees sway. No pressure, no judgment, just healing. David brought his small leather Bible one day, and they read a few verses together under a mango tree. "The righteous may fall 7 times, yet they rise again." Proverbs 24 verse 16. Lilian paused after reading it aloud. "I used to think that verse was for people out there, not people like me." Tears filled her eyes again. "I didn't just fall, David. I got kicked while I was down." David nodded. "But you're still rising. That's the part that matters." One morning, while she was updating her CV on her laptop, Lilian came across a job ad for a role in a small creative agency looking for a receptionist and content assistant. She hesitated. It had been a while since she worked, but something in her said, "Apply." She did. The next week, she got an interview, and within days, she was offered the job. Good hours, decent pay, kind atmosphere. She came back home beaming, holding the letter in her hand. Folake walked out of her room yawning. "What's making you smile like that?" "I got a job," Lilian said, eyes glowing. "Really?" Folake said, surprised. "That's actually impressive." Then Lilia added, "I'm moving out." Folake's mind froze. "Wait, what?" "I found a small apartment near the office. Nothing fancy, just quiet. I think it's time to move." Folake looked at her for a long moment. "So, this is how our story ends again?" Lilian stepped closer. "Not ends, just changes." Folake scoffed lightly. "You're growing wings now, Abby." "No," Lilian said gently. "I'm just choosing what gives me life." Folake rolled her eyes and walked off, muttering Christian people and their holy rebirth. Lilian didn't let the words sink. She was done bleeding for people's opinion. That evening, she packed a few things into a small travel bag. David helped her move. Her new place was small, but it felt like peace. The next morning, she woke up to her own worship playing from a speaker. She cooked her own food, studied her Bible, prayed aloud without fear of mockery. And for the first time in months, she knelt beside her bed and said, "God, thank you. I feel like I am home." Lilia's job brought a kind of rhythm she didn't know she needed. She woke up early every day, packed her lunch, ironed her simple outfit, and headed out with a new sense of purpose. The office was small, with only about 9 people, but the environment was warm. No drama, no competition, just people doing honest work. Her boss, a woman in her early 40s named Mrs. Ene, was unexpectedly kind. "You are calm," she told Lilian one day, like someone who has seen something deep but survived it. Lilian smiled softly. Outside work, her life began to feel stable again. She and David still met occasionally, especially on weekends. Sometimes it was at the park, other times just outside her apartment, sitting on the balcony with juice and quiet music in the background. He never pressured her, never rushed her healing. He simply stayed, like a friend who didn't need to prove anything. One Saturday afternoon, they had just finished reading from the book of James together when David finally said, "Lilian, I would really love for you to come to the church with me tomorrow." She hesitated. He noticed it. "No pressure," he added quickly. "If you are not ready, I get it. I think you like it. It's nothing like where we came from." Lilian stared at the Bible on her lap for a moment. "I'm not afraid of church," she said quietly. "I don't know if I'm ready to trust it again." David nodded. "I understand, I really do, but what if you just came to sit and that's all? No singing, no handshakes, just sit and worship." She looked up at him, unsure why tears had suddenly gathered in her eyes. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll come." That Sunday morning, Lilian dressed simply in a long gown and tied her hair back. No makeup, no earrings, just herself. As they approached the church building, she felt her chest tightened. The brick walls were faded. No grand banners, no glittering LED screens, just a modest sign that read, "Grace Spring Bible Assembly, a place of mercy." Inside, the worship was already going. There were no superstar voices, just people singing off key here and there, a little child crying in the back, an elderly man in a worn-out suit with his hands lifted high. Lilian found a seat at the back and sat down quietly. Then something happened. As the worship leader sang, "Great is her faithfulness," she looked around and saw something she hadn't seen in years: realness. A young lady beside her sang with one hand, clutching a wrinkled tissue. A man in the third row wept openly, no shame. An usher stood near the entrance with one shoe worn out, still smiling as he waved people in. No glitter, no polished performance, just people, broken, needy, reaching. And then it hit her. The church was never meant to be a museum of saints. It's a hospital for the wounded. She wept, not because she was sad, but because she finally understood. "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Matthew 11:28. She had been heavy for months, years even. But here she was, finally resting. She whispered to herself, "This is what church is. Not perfect people, just people trying, failing, and returning." That day changed everything. Lilia began attending weekly, not because someone followed her up, but because something inside her had awakened again. She no longer walked into church expecting to find perfect people. She expected to find hurting people, and it softened her heart. When someone snapped at her, she didn't flinch. When she saw an usher distracted during service, she smiled. Maybe she's just tired, she would think. Her perspective shifted completely. Grace had entered her lens. She remembered what Folake used to say: "Church people are fake." But now, Lilian knew better. It wasn't about fakeness. It was sometimes just brokenness that hadn't healed properly. She began to forgive, not just the people from the old church, but herself. She stopped blaming her voice for drawing attention, stopped punishing herself for the keys that spiraled everything. She stopped hating herself for being human. The following weeks unfolded like the sunrise, quiet, slow, but undeniably warm. Lilian continued her job with diligence, earning not just her salary, but admiration from her co-workers. Her boss began trusting her with more responsibility. She no longer counted days in pain. She counted them in growth. She still worshipped quietly in church. No lead roles, no choir robes yet, just worship from the pew, with eyes closed and hands sometimes trembling with gratitude. But one part of her healing stood taller than the rest: David. He had become her safe place, her gentle voice of reason. He didn't fix her. He just walked beside her, like someone walking through fog, holding her hand but never pulling too fast. Sometimes They walked home from church talking about scripture. Other times, they sat by the park, just watching the breeze move through trees. Their laughter grew deeper, their silences more comfortable. One Saturday evening, as the sun set golden over the trees and the air smelled like rain had passed by, David called Lilian. "Would you like to take a walk?" She smiled. "You already know the answer." They met at the usual park. It was quieter than usual. Families had gone home, and only a few scattered joggers remained. They walked without hurry, their arms brushing lightly now and then. David had something on his mind. She could feel it, but she didn't press. Eventually, they reached their favorite spot, a low wooden bench under an old almond tree. They sat. Lilian kicked her slippers off and curled one leg under the other. David looked at her for a moment and then at the sky. The silence stretched. Then softly he spoke. "Lilian," he began, his voice low and steady. "You know I care about you, right?" She turned to look at him. His eyes held sincerity, but also nervousness. "I have been praying about this for some time now," he continued. "I didn't want emotion to cloud it. I didn't want pain to blur it either. But even after the storm, even after the silence, it's still you." Lilian's heart began to thump. David took a deep breath. "I love you, Lilian." Her breath caught. He smiled faintly. "I didn't want to say it without being sure, but now I am. You're strong, you're kind, honest, and real. I've seen your brokenness, and I've seen your healing. I've watched you grow with God again, and nothing has drawn me more." The wind rustled the leaves above them, like nature paused to listen. "I'm not saying this for today," he added quickly. I want to know if you will pray about it too. I want us to walk this road intentionally, with God leading every step." Lilia blinked rapidly. She wasn't expecting to cry, but something about the moment, the calm, the words, the way he looked at her like she was more than her past, it undid her. "I'm not rushing you," he said softly. "Take your time. Seek God. I'll wait." Lilian didn't speak for a while. Her heart felt like it was wrapped in warmth. Then finally, she whispered, "Okay, I will." David smiled, nodded, and leaned back on the bench, still holding her hand gently. They didn't need to say anything else. That evening, they watched the sky fade into pink and gold, and it felt like God had taken the ashes of their stories and lit a new kind of fire. Not the one that burns, but the kind that glows. Lilian took David's words seriously. She didn't rush her answer. Over the following days, she carved out time in her small apartment to pray. Not emotional prayers this time, but quiet, intentional ones. "God," she would whisper, "I don't want to say yes because I'm excited. And I don't want to say no because I'm scared. I want to say yes because you are in it." And one morning, during her Bible study, her eyes fell on the verse she had read many times before, but this time it came alive. "He makes all things beautiful in his time." Ecclesiastes 3 verse 11. That was it. Not in her time, not when she thought she was ready, but in his. And now, it was his time. She picked her phone and texted David. "Let's take that step. With God, I am ready." The journey to marriage wasn't grand or extravagant. It was simple, intentional, and deeply joyful. Their wedding was held in the small church David had introduced to her, the same one where Lilian first wept quietly at the back row. Now, she stood at the altar, eyes glistening, not from pain this time, but from joy. She wore an elegant white gown, modest, graceful, and glowing. David stood in a charcoal grey suit, nervous but smiling like a boy, seeing a miracle in human form. The pastor officiating was the same one who had once told David, "God is not done with you." Now, he looked at both of them and said, "These two have not just found love, they found restoration." There weren't hundreds of guests, no billboard announcements, just family, a few close friends, church members, and the undeniable presence of God. When they exchanged vows, Lilian's voice cracked as she said, "I thought I was too broken for love, but God sent me someone who saw me through his eyes." And David responded, "I didn't just choose a wife, I chose my co-heir in grace." They sealed it with a kiss, not one stolen in shame this time, but one bathed in blessing. A month after the wedding, their pictures began making quiet rounds online. David hadn't posted them immediately, but a friend shared one photo. Lilian and David hand in hand, smiling as they walked down the aisle, surrounded by joy. And somehow, the photo found Cecilia. She was scrolling aimlessly one night when it appeared on her screen. Her finger paused mid-scroll. Her heart stopped. There they were, married. She stared at the screen as if the image would change. For a moment, she felt rage rise in her chest. Tears welled up in her eyes, but not from happiness, from pain, from bitterness, from the haunting echo of what could have been. She had spent so long feeding on resentment, convicting herself that she was the victim, that Lilian had stolen what she was destined for. But now, all she saw was a picture of two people who had grown through fire, people she tried to destroy, and yet, here they were, smiling, peaceful, whole. She burst into tears, and for the first time in years, she prayed. "God," she whispered, "I was wrong." Her chest heaved as regret flooded her. "I gossiped. I spread that picture. I tried to ruin them. I couldn't stand her because of my own insecurity. And now, look at them." She cried harder. "Forgive me, not just for what I did, but for the pride that made me think I was better." A few weeks later, David received a message on Facebook from Cecilia. "Hi David, I know I'm the last person you'd probably want to hear from, but I owe you something. The truth. I was the one who took the picture. I sent it to the pastor. I spread it. I destroyed your names. I am so sorry. I was hurt. I let bitterness lead me. But God is dealing with me now, and I am truly, deeply sorry." David read the message in silence. He closed his eyes and said a short prayer. "Lord, help me forgive truly." Then he typed back, "Thank you for your honesty, Cecilia. It takes courage to confess what you just did. I forgive you, and I pray God continues to work in your heart the same way He's worked in ours. No hate, no sarcasm, just grace." Lilian now sings again, but not from stages that seek applause. She sings to women's group, at small Bible studies, sometimes just at home, while cooking for David, humming softly as they prepare to host a few friends. She learned something that became the anchor of her life. Church is not a place where perfect people gather. It's a place where the broken come to find help, hope, and healing. She tells people, "I've been wounded in church, and I've also been healed by Christ." And now, she lives her life not to prove anything, but to shine grace. And maybe, as Lilian and David walked hand in hand into their new beginning, there were still scars, reminders of what they had survived. But those scars had softened, not because they pretended the pain never happened, but because they let God write something new over it. Their story isn't just about romance or redemption, it's about us. Because if we are honest, we've all been wounded, maybe not by church, but by people we trusted, by systems that were supposed to protect us, by voices that judged us when we needed grace the most. But here is what Lilian's journey reminds us of. Church was never meant to be a stage for the perfect. It's a hospital for the broken. So, if you've been hurt in church, know this, you are not alone. You are not the first, and you are definitely not beyond healing. And no, don't let people's mistakes push you away from a God who has never failed you. He didn't do what they did. He's still calling, still waiting, because why gossip kills, grace heals. Cecilia's words almost crushed what God was building. But he didn't win. Mercy did. And when the church rejected them, God restored them. He gave them love, purpose, a fresh start. And finally, we learned this. Don't serve to be seen. Serve to be faithful. Lilian served when no one was watching. And when the time was right, he lifted her. So, maybe you are watching this with your own wound. Maybe you are still healing. Let this story be your reminder. You are not forgotten. You are not disqualified. You are just on your way to being whole again. If this story touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who is healing, someone who needs to know God still writes beautiful endings, even after church wounds. I hope you enjoyed this story. Thanks for always watching. If you love this, you will love the next one. Click to watch it now. I'll see you in the next. Goodbye.